the church has historically, influenced the arts, influenced, literature, society, is because it's natural. That should be there. It's a great entranceway, a great doorway into these bigger questions. I mean, I think that what happens it happened to me at one time, when I was younger, you start asking these bigger level questions, and I went into philosophy and all that kind of stuff. And what happens is it's almost like there's tiers to it. Like you start with, why does America believe this in the Constitution? And then you kind of raise the bar of like, so then you think, oh, well, there's a sociocultural influence of Christianity in history. And I started reading about, that kind of stuff. And then you get into these higher order questions, and you start asking things like, well, which of the churches is right? Well, which God is right? How do we compare these two? Is it all false? And so you end up kind of relying on some things like logic, reason, and so forth. And then if you're an atheist, you start asking questions like, what is it? What is logic? Right? What are the things themselves that we're referring to in all these conversations? So when we talk about reason, when we talk about logic, when we talk about even history or time or any of these are philosophical concepts that, if you think about it and reason through it, you can't identify those with anything in time and space. And so things like numbers, things like mathematical propositions, truths, mathematical entities, abstract concepts, once you start looking at more abstract concepts like what I'm saying, you start to realize that we can't just have a purely material universe. The purely material universe is self-refuting because it leads us into a determined causal chain. You mentioned some of the new atheists. Some of them openly affirm this, that we're just purely programmed robots. If that's the case, then you're not making the decisions that you're making. You're not a you. There's no I. There's no real self that underlies all those experiences that you're having in your life. So I just always found that philosophy was, for you, maybe the socio-cultural aspects of what got you into it. For me, it was philosophy and asking these bigger questions and kind of reasoning myself into Orthodox Christianity. But there's different doorways that people can take into these things, and I think that the traditional cultural route is definitely a good one. It's there for a reason. And you said, but you're not Romanian. You just live in Romania, right?
No, I've lived. I'm now a citizen of Romania.
You are? Okay.
But up until 7 years ago, I'd never stepped foot in this country, so I have no Romanian heritage as such. But when it came to the choices of church, I'm not so. You couldn't put me in a society of Buddhists and I become a Buddhist. I'm not that easily influenced.
Right.
But I was sitting with it was very much looking at the United States, the Christianity versus atheists. Let's call it an argument. And now the people who were originally guys who I considered on my side, I look at them and I detest them, literally. And speaking with a lot of the bishops and the Orthodox Christian priests here, they were talking about Catholicism. And I'm sure some Catholics watch your show, and I don't wish to talk negatively about it, so I won't. But I will say I was in a monastery where the man had not left the grounds of the monastery since 1969. All through communism, all through the revolution, the head of the priest up there, the head priest up there had not left the confines of this monastery. There's a beautiful lake, there are beautiful grounds, there's farmland, etc. But he hadn't stepped foot off. So he said, "Are you a Christian?" I said, "Yeah, of sorts. So you can call me a seeker. I'm obviously interested in it. I've read the Bible, but I wouldn't call myself a Christian." He goes, "Well, whatever you do, stay away from Catholicism." So what do you mean? He talked about the Great Schism, obviously 1054. All Orthodox priests will talk about that for a million years. But his point was, he was talking about the influence of the new Pope. And the new Pope, who apparently, this guy was talking about George Soros and his influence on the Catholic Church. Keep in mind, he hadn't left this little area of the world, no more than 2 or 3 square miles.
But he was still woke.
Yeah, very, very woke indeed. And a lot of the things that the new Pope is saying, the Pope of Catholicism, are exactly the kind of things that I'm trying to move away from in my journey towards Christianity. So, would I really ever, take Catholicism seriously? No.
Yeah, we often say around my circles and my Discord that Pope Francis is actually the best Orthodox apologist out there. Like he makes more people Orthodox than I could ever do.
Well, indeed.
So that's interesting. So What do you think about the liturgies? Because what really got me interested in Orthodoxy, yeah, you read all the books and stuff like that, but what really surprised me was when I actually started going to the liturgy, and it has this transformative effect. I think the more that you actually just go and spend time there in the liturgy and doing it is what is the biggest kind of renovator of our being.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've keep in mind a lot of things have been closed here because of the
Oh,
coronavirus.
yeah.
I used to spend but my I'm taking a more, let's call it a personal touch. I literally go to the original reason why these people start contacting me when I was visiting all these various monasteries. It started off as me being interested in the architecture. I go in, I give some money, but because I always turned up in these flash fancy cars and I was a foreigner, usually it's the typical Romanian making pilgrimage to these places. The priests and the people in charge have always had an interest in who I was and what I was doing there. So the number of hours I've sat and spoken with priests who most people simply wouldn't get an audience with. I've been shown I've been shown art collections from underneath these monasteries where the replicas of these paintings are hanging in museums in Italy, but the originals are here underneath some Romanian monastery somewhere. The time I've spent with these guys has been, I think, one of the biggest influences to my conversion, because I see that this is where society and civilization is maintained. You know, the world's on fire in a lot of parts of the world, and people are burning down entire cities. But here in this monastery, the classical civilization of European culture is untouched. These people are like they're from a different time. It's literally like stepping back in time when you go into some of these places. So it's been hours of conversation in my very broken Romanian. If I do have an interpreter, I'm very happy to have one with me. And that's been, I think, my main, let's call it catalyst. That's dragged me into it. Sitting with these very, very important people who know more than, I mean, they've studied this their entire life. It's their life's work, essentially. 50, 60, 70 years reading the same things and studying the same stuff. So I mean, amazing people, and that's what's converted me. But I am looking for a local church. Everything's shut down right now because of the virus, and I will be attending. Once everything opens back up.
Yeah, I mean, Romania is great. One of my favorite theologians, Father Dumitru Staniloi, I recommend his books often. His book, Orthodox Dogmatics, and the Experience of God, is really, really good, especially Volume 1. I highly recommend that. And then, of course, Elder Cleopa of Romania is one of the famous Orthodox elders from Romania. By the way, in our Discord, we actually have one of the chief apologists in our circles is Father Deacon Dr. Ananias, and he is in the Romanian Archdiocese. So we have a pretty close connection too.
Yeah.
And his priest actually had to flee Romania under the communists. So
yes.
we have a pretty close connection to Romanians in my Discord.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, no, the communists tried to stamp out religion the same way the Soviet Union and the USSR did, but it simply didn't work in Romania. It just moved everything underground. But most of the big monasteries and churches, the people, as I said, the guy who's been in power, who's been on his ground since 1969, the communists, even though they tried to make a point of stamping out religion, they were literally too afraid to mess with these people, because the church holds a lot of the political power in this country. Not a single member of parliament gets elected without the blessing of the church. Mm-hmm. The church says you should vote for this guy, that guy gets elected, and that's the way it is. The power is still very real. I read these stupid memes online from the old. I'm still a member of all these old atheist groups on Facebook that I joined when I was a teenager, and people will say stupid things like, there was a time when Christianity was in charge of the world. It was called the Dark Ages. No, there was a time when humans didn't have technology. It was called the Dark Ages. Don't bring Christianity into this, because people always abuse their power. But I look at this society where religion very much is in charge as compared to a lot of countries. And as I said, one of the safest capital cities in all of the European Union, crime rate about 1/6 of what it is in the United Kingdom. It's a wonderfully safe and beautiful place to live.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to be rude. I was just pulling this out because this was a wonderful wedding gift I just got from my godfather, who
congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. We had a wonderful Orthodox service. I was honored to have that. But my godfather gave me this gigantic 3-volume famous. Now, prior to this, I only had the abridged Julian Norwich History of Byzantium. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because a lot of people don't know that most of the cultural achievements that we think of as Middle Ages, a lot of that is from Byzantium. It's not from Roman Catholicism. It's from Byzantium, things like hospitals and this kind of stuff, universities. But actually, the history of Byzantium is suppressed in the West. And so that older Orthodox culture that you're talking about that Romania still possesses, we call that the first Europe. So that's like the Europe of the first 1,000 years of Christianity. You are well aware of the 1054 split.